Scorpio, I want you to hear this without dismissing it too quickly. Something meaningful is moving back toward you, and it carries the feeling of a return that began long ago. This is not a small shift, and it does not feel accidental. Something inside you was always meant to arrive at this message during this exact emotional season. There are moments when life changes direction quietly beneath the surface, like a tide turning before anyone can see it. That is the feeling surrounding you now. An unseen force has been rearranging something on your behalf, and what once felt delayed is beginning to respond to your energy again. Earlier today, I sat in silence with the cards during the stillness of late spring light, in one of those rare moments where intuition feels louder than sound. Justice, the Six of Pentacles, the Wheel of Fortune, the Hierophant, and the Star appeared together, each one echoing the same message in a different form. Something meant for you has already started moving closer. But this kind of return asks for presence. If you completely disconnect from it or convince yourself you are not meant to receive it, the opening begins fading like a signal disappearing into fog. This feels tied to something deeper than coincidence or entertainment. What surrounds you now feels emotionally connected to your name through the quiet memory of what your heart once gave without needing recognition in return. Scorpio, have you ever wondered whether one of your silent acts of kindness might eventually circle back in a form you never expected? Because this energy carries exactly that feeling. Something buried beneath distance, time, or silence is finding its way back to the surface now. Someone you may barely remember still remembers the peace you gave them, and one message continues echoing through all of this. I returned what their heart once gave me when I needed peace. So now the real question becomes whether you are willing to let yourself receive it. Take a slow breath and notice what shifts inside you. If your chest feels warmer or emotion rises unexpectedly, it may be because some part of your spirit already recognizes this movement. You no longer need to prove your worth through exhaustion or struggle. The compassion you offered during seasons where nobody noticed still carried weight. Those quiet moments became seeds beneath the surface, and somewhere beyond your awareness, they continued growing long after you forgot where you planted them. This video is less about predicting your future and more about helping you notice what may already be unfolding around you. Some things begin invisibly first, moving through the hearts of people you once touched and through moments you assumed had disappeared completely. If this resonates with you, leave a comment below and write something like, "I'm ready to receive what no longer needs to hide from me," or "I open my heart to what is finally returning." Words carry emotional weight, especially when they are spoken from honesty instead of fear. And when you write them down, it becomes easier for your mind and spirit to stand in the same place together. I also want you to know that your presence here matters. Every comment and shared reflection helps keep this space grounded in healing, connection, and emotional honesty for the people who arrive searching for clarity during uncertain seasons. So stay with me a little longer, Scorpio. What is beginning to unfold carries more depth than it first appears. Something quietly preparing itself beneath the surface may be far more personal and far more life-changing than you expected. Tell me what brought you here today. As this message continues, you may begin recognizing signs that something emotional has already started shifting within you. Maybe it arrived as a sudden wave of feeling, a strange calm after months of heaviness, or repeating numbers like 1111, 888, or 777 appearing at unusual moments. These patterns often feel like soft echoes beneath ordinary life, reminders that timing is changing and something long delayed is beginning to move again. Around May 17 and 18, the emotional atmosphere feels especially sensitive for Scorpio energy, almost like a hidden current rising beneath still water before dawn. When I looked back at the cards earlier, the combination felt even more revealing with time. Justice, The Six of Pentacles, the Wheel of Fortune, the Hierophant, and the Star together created the feeling of a door quietly unlocking somewhere beyond immediate sight. Each symbol pointed toward the same deeper truth: your past choices, your restrained kindness, and the sacrifices you carried silently were never erased. Life remembers more than we think it does, not in some distant, abstract way, but through an emotional current that continues moving long after moments appear finished. And now, Scorpio, something connected to your own light is beginning to rise back into view. The card of Justice opens this sequence with unusual clarity, not as punishment, but as restoration. It feels less like judgment and more like life quietly correcting an imbalance that has existed for too long. What you once gave without recognition is beginning to move back toward you now, not as pity or charity, but as emotional balance finally restoring itself. Then comes the Six of Pentacles, tied to sacred exchange and the rhythm of giving and receiving. The one who once carried others through difficult seasons is finally being asked to receive something back. When kindness is planted during barren seasons, life eventually answers in its own timing. Sometimes the return arrives through opportunity, financial relief, or a conversation that changes something inside you. The form matters less than the movement itself. What once left your hands in scarcity is returning carrying a different weight now. Then the Wheel of Fortune begins turning, and something frozen starts loosening beneath the surface. This shift is not happening because you forced it into existence. It is happening because some part of you has finally aligned with what your spirit has been trying to receive for a long time. Scorpio, the energy around you now feels charged with movement. Opportunities feel closer, recognition arrives more easily, and even practical areas like money or work may begin responding differently. But this is not random luck. It feels connected to emotional timing and the maturity formed through survival. You are not behind in life, no matter how many times it once felt that way. What is unfolding now carries the feeling of arriving at the exact moment something hidden was always meant to open. Then the Hierophant appears, bringing the energy of wisdom and unseen order. In this message, it feels tied to an invisible emotional current that remembers integrity, resilience, and the quiet courage it takes to remain kind without guarantees. This energy does not respond to fame or attention. It notices the people who continued loving gently when nobody was watching. Scorpio, your energy still carries traces of those moments, and something connected to them is beginning to answer back now. And then comes the Star, gentle but unmistakable. It does not appear to expose your wounds, but to remind you that your worth never disappeared during the years you spent waiting, grieving, rebuilding, or carrying more than others realized. The Star feels less like a reward and more like your own light finally being reflected back to you. Astrologically, the energy around May 17 and 18 carries unusual emotional sensitivity for Scorpio. It feels like pressure slowly releasing after remaining trapped beneath the surface for too long. With the Taurus-Scorpio axis stirring questions of value, trust, and emotional security, this period feels tied to overdue clarity and karmic return. The number 8 also feels important around this energy. In numerology, it carries the vibration of alignment, abundance, and inner authority after difficult rebuilding cycles. When this number repeats itself, it often signals that the outer world is beginning to reflect something your soul has already been preparing for internally. And there is one final spiritual truth woven quietly through all of this. The love, patience, and grace you once gave in silence never disappeared at all. You gave quietly, Scorpio, without needing recognition to prove your heart was real. And now, what begins returning to you feels larger than money alone. It carries peace, emotional release, and the kind of validation that reaches places inside you that have felt unseen for too long. Maybe you are remembering a moment now when you helped someone without expecting anything back, or every time you chose compassion instead of bitterness and patience instead of anger. Those moments mattered more than you realized. Life continued holding on to them quietly, even after the world seemed to move on. And if you keep seeing repeating numbers or sensing a shift you cannot fully explain yet, pay attention to it. Sometimes the body recognizes change before the mind can explain it clearly. Leave a comment and share the number you have been seeing most lately, whether it is 1111, 888, or another pattern entirely. These signs often appear when something beneath the surface begins realigning emotionally. The moment you acknowledge them openly, you become more aware of what is already trying to move toward you. And honestly, this feels like only the beginning of the shift surrounding you now. The return around you feels real, even if it has not fully entered your visible world yet. It moves more like a tide gathering strength before reaching shore, responding not to force, but to emotional resonance and the energy you carried through difficult seasons. People who have lived through deep transformation understand this feeling well. Sometimes life stores the impact of quiet acts until the exact season they are needed again. Especially the kindness offered while you were exhausted yourself. None of it disappeared. The Six of Pentacles reflects that balance finally returning, the hand that once gave, now learning how to receive without guilt attached to it. You may have brought calm to someone living through emotional chaos years ago, and someone, somewhere, never forgot what your presence meant during that time. When the Wheel of Fortune appeared, it felt tied to more than financial movement. It carried the feeling of emotional release, a delayed answer finally arriving after a long silence. Something trapped beneath old timing is shifting now, bringing both practical change and emotional closure together. And one message continues, echoing through all of this. I returned what their heart once gave me, peace. That is why this moment feels connected so deeply to emotional truth. When kindness is given sincerely, without the need for recognition, life remembers it quietly until the circle is ready to complete itself. What feels close now is not random luck, Scorpio. It feels like something real finding its way back to you. But receiving has its own rhythm, and it asks for willingness instead of fear. It asks whether you are ready to stop resisting the possibility that good things can arrive without pain attached to them. Not because you became perfect, but because the seeds were planted long ago, and the energy around May 17th and 18th carries the feeling of harvest after endurance. There is a quiet truth woven through all of this, the idea that those who sow through tears eventually return carrying joy. And honestly, that feels close to your story. You gave even while emotionally drained, and now something gentler is trying to answer back. A form of restoration, a form of emotional provision. But you still have to ask yourself honestly whether you are allowing it into your life or whether old fear keeps pushing it away before it can fully arrive. If this resonates somewhere deep inside you, leave a comment and write, I open my heart to what is finally returning. That statement becomes more than reassurance. It becomes a quiet agreement with yourself to stop turning away from what your spirit may already recognize. Scorpio, this is not only about receiving support or abundance. It is also confirmation that nothing you once gave from love was ever meaningless. And the moment you are standing in now feels more sensitive than it first appears. Around May 17th and 18th, the energy surrounding you carries the feeling of a threshold quietly opening beneath the surface. There are moments when life becomes more responsive, when something hidden begins moving closer for the people emotionally prepared to receive it. The difficult part is that self-doubt can interrupt the very thing you have been waiting for. When you begin questioning whether you deserve peace or support, the connection weakens, the same way a flower slowly closes when daylight disappears. Not because you are being punished, but because fear pulls you away from openness. There is a bridge between where you are emotionally and what is trying to reach you now. It feels delicate, almost like light stretched across dark water, alive, but dependent on your willingness to trust it long enough to cross. Fear and hesitation can dim that signal quickly, especially after years spent expecting disappointment instead of return. The energy around you responds more to belief than force. Every time the voice inside says, "This cannot belong to me," it creates distance between you and the very thing trying to arrive. That is why emotional timing matters so deeply now, Scorpio. Imagine this connection like a glowing path appearing quietly through fog. The longer you remain emotionally present with it, the stronger it becomes. But when fear convinces you to retreat again, the path begins fading before it fully reaches you. You have spent years carrying yourself through seasons where almost nobody saw your effort clearly. So now that something restorative is finally moving toward you, will you allow yourself to receive it differently this time? Most of the time, it is not arrogance that blocks healing or abundance. It is fear. Fear of disappointment, fear of hoping again, fear that opening your heart will only repeat old wounds you fought hard to survive. But this moment feels different, Scorpio. What is unfolding now feels larger than financial change alone. It feels tied to restoration, to balance finally correcting itself after years of emotional unevenness. Maybe you have already felt it physically before understanding it emotionally. A calmer breath, a lighter chest. Repeating numbers like 1111, 888, or 777 appearing at strange moments as if something beneath ordinary life is trying to reach your attention gently instead of loudly. These signs often appear when the soul begins realigning with something it once stopped believing it could receive. And now, the only thing left is your willingness to stop resisting what may already be trying to enter your life. So let me ask you carefully, Scorpio. Can you stop stepping back the moment something good approaches you? Can you let yourself say yes without immediately preparing for loss afterward? If your answer feels honest somewhere inside your chest, leave it in the comments. You can write, "I will not step back from what is meant for me," or "I open the door to what no longer needs to stay hidden from me." Sometimes healing begins the moment we stop denying what we truly want. And when you acknowledge that readiness openly, something inside the emotional current settles into place. The connection strengthens, the distance shortens. What once felt unreachable begins moving closer with less resistance around it. This moment is not asking for blind belief. It is asking something much quieter and more personal than that. Are you finally willing to receive the things your spirit has spent years surviving for? And what if this first wave was never the full story? What if the relief you are beginning to feel now is only the beginning of something larger still forming beneath the surface? A second wave feels close, brighter and more expansive than the first, but it asks for something different from you. It asks for genuine inner peace instead of survival mode. Not forced positivity, not performance, just the quiet moment where your heart finally remembers what safety feels like again. The first shift arrived to keep you from disappearing into exhaustion completely, but the second wave carries another purpose entirely. It is not arriving to rescue you. It is arriving to reveal who you become once you stop living only to survive. When the sun and the star appeared together, the energy felt impossible to ignore. The sun carried warmth, confidence, and emotional visibility, while the star followed with healing, hope, and recognition that felt deeply personal. Together they reflected what happens when your inner world finally begins aligning with the worth you struggled for so long to believe was already yours. Scorpio, you have already walked through seasons that felt like fire, and now, like something rising slowly from ash after a long night, you are moving beyond survival and into visibility again. The light returning to you is not forced. It begins when you stop believing you must constantly prove your worth through struggle and exhaustion. When guilt loosens its grip and the fear of not enough begins to soften, something inside your life starts opening differently. The second wave responds to that kind of emotional readiness, not forced positivity or performance, but the calm that appears when joy no longer feels unsafe to hold. And joy, Scorpio, is often quieter than people expect. Sometimes it is simply the breath you release when you realize you are no longer fighting everything around you every day. Sometimes it is the softness returning to your face after years spent preparing for disappointment before anything good could fully arrive. That is the energy this next chapter responds to. The number 1 carries the feeling of a doorway opening into a different version of life, while the number 7 speaks of intuition, protection, and emotional grounding after difficult cycles. Together, they point toward beginning again, but with experience instead of emptiness. This next shift brings more than practical support. It brings ease, stability, and people who reflect the version of you who no longer apologizes for receiving care or recognition. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable, and in doing that, you quietly become proof that healing does not require abandoning yourself. There is also something symbolic about color during this season. Soft gold carries the feeling of dignity and quiet confidence. Light blue supports emotional honesty, while lavender and muted purple connect to intuition and calm inner strength when fear tries pulling you back into old habits. None of this feels accidental. It feels like your spirit slowly returning to itself after too many painful seasons. And maybe that is the deepest part of transformation, not escaping your story, but realizing the fire shaped you without destroying who you are. This next chapter was never waiting for perfection. It was waiting for permission. So let me ask you honestly, Scorpio, are you ready for the second wave now? Not the version where you quietly hope for change while expecting disappointment, but the one where you finally allow yourself to live more openly inside your own light. If this resonates with you, leave a comment and write, "I'm ready to rise. I welcome what is finally returning to me." Words carry emotional weight, especially when they are spoken from honesty instead of fear. And when this next wave fully arrives, you will stop questioning whether joy belongs in your life. Slowly, you will understand that happiness is not selfish, and emotional safety is not something you must earn through suffering first. The path ahead no longer feels as dark as it once did. Something warmer is moving toward you now. As this shift settles into reality, it becomes important to ground it into your everyday life. Any blessing trying to stay in your world needs a stable place to land. The way you care for your body, mind, and emotional energy quietly tells life whether you are prepared to receive support continuously rather than temporarily. That is why slowing the breath matters right now. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, then exhale gently for 6, as if you are loosening emotional knots your body has carried silently for years. Pair that with simple moments in nature whenever possible. Even a short walk beneath open sky can quiet emotional noise more deeply than endlessly searching for reassurance online. And if your body feels exhausted, let yourself rest without turning that exhaustion into shame. Before bed, quietly tell yourself, "I open myself to restoration," and allow your mind to soften instead of remaining trapped in survival mode through the night. Support yourself gently, not because you are broken, but because you are finally learning how to thrive instead of merely endure. And when it comes to work, Scorpio, your intuition often notices what feels wrong long before logic can explain it. If you have been waking up drained by the thought of another day, that feeling may be asking for your attention more seriously now. Pay attention to repeated signs over the next few weeks, a familiar name appearing again, a job opportunity returning, or a conversation that lingers longer than expected. Allow yourself to explore what genuinely pulls at your curiosity. instead of dismissing it because it feels uncertain. The next chapter rarely arrives all at once. It usually reveals itself through smaller openings and moments that quietly continue calling your attention back. And yes, practical action still matters. Update the resume, send the message you keep hesitating over, share the idea that continues returning to you late at night. You are not behind where you are supposed to be, even if life once made you feel delayed. Financially, abundance may still feel unfamiliar after so much time spent surviving, but that is exactly why this season matters emotionally. The support or stability moving toward you deserves care instead of fear. Set something aside intentionally, even if it begins small, and let it become a symbol of trust in your future, instead of another expense disappearing into routine life. And when it comes to love, there is a softer energy surrounding you lately. The walls around your heart made sense after everything you carried, but something about your energy is shifting now. People can feel when someone begins returning to themselves emotionally, and that light naturally draws connection closer. Allow yourself to feel again without constantly preparing for disappointment first. And if someone cannot fully see your value, let that become information instead of proof that you should close yourself off again. Real connection only grows where honesty exists. The quieter practices you keep now matter too. Something as simple as, "I am worthy of receiving good things," can slowly soften the part of you that learned to expect disappointment before joy. And if words feel too heavy some nights, let silence become part of the practice instead. Sit quietly for a few minutes before bed, light a candle if it helps, and allow yourself to listen inward again. Those quiet moments matter more than you realize. They become reminders that receiving is not only something you beg for during difficult seasons, it is something you slowly learn to practice through presence and care. Scorpio, you do not need to chase what genuinely belongs to you. You only need to stop pushing it away before it has the chance to fully arrive. These small habits, these grounded choices, become the doorway through which the next phase of your life begins entering. Not because you exhausted yourself proving your worth, but because you stayed emotionally present long enough to let life meet you differently this time. Something about your energy is changing because you are finally beginning to see yourself differently too. You do not need perfection to receive what is trying to reach you now. You only need openness. And if this message resonates somewhere deep inside you, leave a comment below and write, "I'm ready to receive what is finally returning to me." If this message brought you clarity or comfort, take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone else who may need encouragement during their own season of change. The door was never fully closed, Scorpio. It was waiting for your willingness to open it from the inside.